High strangeness. This is when you hear the stories of people looking up into the clouds and seeing things like the Virgin Mary, or maybe a picture of God, or maybe some type of animal. But this story that you're about to hear is so bizarre. Why? Because it came in on our High Strangeness 24-hour hotline. And in this case, they did not see God in the clouds. They saw something else. Listen to the call between me and Valerie. And what you're about to hear, you may not believe it.
You are about to hear tales of high strangeness. Be careful, you may not believe it.
It's June 22nd, 2020 in Georgia. Valerie, the mother of 2 adult children, was always known not to be so religious or even a Christian, but she was known to be spiritual. After talking with Valerie at the first part of the call and also hearing that she is a little more spiritual versus religion, I then hear the next part of her story. While Valerie's son was at the hospital, she was at home laying in her bed. Then suddenly something entered her room standing over her bed. And according to Valerie, this was first of many messages. So what you're about to hear didn't come to a surprise to Valerie, but it definitely came to a surprise to me, who was listening to the call.
Okay. And then give me a little background information. When did this happen? And so when did it happen?
It happened, I think it was June 23rd or the 22nd of 2020. He was diabetic, and he went into a diabetic coma, and he just didn't come out of it. But I could feel his spirit. I could feel his spirit transitioning. I knew. He died almost a month before he turned 32. So, listen at this. So when we, a couple of days after my son was buried, okay, I told my daughter that, first of all, when he transitioned, his spirit came to me and sat on my bed. I knew he was gone. And I told my daughter, I said, a couple of days, I said, his name is Akeem. I said, Akeem, she did his service and everything. I said, he knows exactly what you did.
So when funerals are over, when the friends and other family members decide to go back to their home, the inner family is left to mourn. And they also have questions about what happened that day of the funeral, such as questions like, did I do a good job? Or did this funeral meet the approval of the person that passed away? This is some of the questions that Valerie's daughter had, who was actually wanting to know, did she do a good job? And surprisingly enough, Valerie, who's very optimistic and spiritual, was like, yeah, you did a good job. But she also gave her instructions to find out for herself. Listen to what happened next.
He knows. He's seen everything. He's pleased with everything. He knows. And she said, well, Akeem, if you know what I did, I want you to know. And if you can hear me, I want you to show me a sign.
With the reinsurance from her mother, Valerie's daughter decided to just go on with their everyday chores, and maybe she would get an answer. While Valerie and her daughter was at the grocery store, and when they went back out to the parking lot, they got their answer. And so what Valerie explained to me on the call what happened next, I had to listen to twice myself. So why don't you listen to this call and listen closely?
So she asked me to take her to the store. It was a beautiful day. It was in July. So when we get to the store, we just talking. She gets out of the car. She's screaming. I'm like, what is wrong with you, Angel? She said, Mommy, look in the sky. Look in the sky. Look. His face was looking at us in the clouds. Beautiful. Him just looking. And I was like, I knew it. I told you that he was with us. He could hear. I told you. And then on his plaque, when you bury them, you put it wasn't a headstone, it was just what they call a plaque. So there are Leos, so she put on there, it was a lion's head and then he played basketball, so we put the basketball thing on there. So when his face was fading away, it turned into a big lion's head. And I was just like, because I'm so a believer of the spiritual beings and creation and ancestry and all that. I have that belief. And she kept saying, "Mommy, I knew you had the power. You always had the power." And I was like, "You have the power. You have the spiritual power." And every time I try to explain that to someone, especially people that call themselves Christian.
Now that's high strangeness. Now I had to ask myself the question, Roderick, does this happen a lot? So I looked into a couple of more cases, and here's something that I found. Let's go back to Grand Falls, Canada, August the 1st, 2011. Amateur cameraman Dennis Former was in his backyard with his family. He decided to go out and get his camera because there was an unusual cloud formation, and he said, "Hey, this will make a great video." What he didn't expect was the clouds to give him something worth videoing. So take a look at this video and watch it in its entirety as these clouds form something very unusual. Valerie and her daughter didn't have a camera when they saw their loved one in the sky. So I sent the audio over to one of our high strangeness sketch artists, trying to give us a visualization of what Valerie saw. And here's what they came up with.
She's screaming. I'm like, "What is wrong with you, Angel?" She said, "Mommy, look in the sky. Look in the sky. Look." His face was looking at us in the clouds. Beautiful. Him just looking. And I was like, "I knew it. I told you that he.
I did think this was an amazing sketch, so I took it a little further and I sent this over to some high strangeness specialists to see what they thought about the audio.
So listening to the story of the mother and the daughter sharing their very, very delicate situation that happened with her son and her brother, this is a very common occurrence when I hear people share that they've had these connections or been able to see, feel, or encounter the presence of a loved one. When a lot of times when a person is so emotionally tied in a situation of a loved one's passing, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, they're connecting to their aura still, and those vibrations tend to ignite a lot of visuals, a lot of I wouldn't say psychological, but it can be influenced to a certain extent because you want to be able to build a bridge and have that connection to that person. So you want to try to figure out the best way to connect to them and the things that they're most familiar with. So one of the son's favorite animals was the lion. That was one of the things that he was so attracted to, and just it was a symbolism of him. So a lot of times we want to make those same connections even after death. So we have a tendency to see and visualize these concepts, so that way it could bring us peace. So when the mother and the daughter said that they walked out the store and they looked in the sky and they were able to make out their son/brother's face in the clouds, it's because they've activated an additional sense, is what I call the seventh sense. They've activated this additional sense to be able to have this connection with that loved one. And with them sharing the same emotional position, that ability to see that loved one together is not very uncommon, because they're sharing the same kinetics of emotional energy. So them being able to have that same visual of him in his face, as well as a symbolism of him, is not very, very uncommon. Stories like this don't get told enough. And in essence, if I was to rate this would definitely be a factor of high strangeness.
All right, so it's time for you to gather your own opinion about what you heard in this video. And as a UFO investigator and investigator of high strangeness, I decided to make sure I asked one of the most important questions to Valerie, was to make sure what was her state of mind when she saw what she saw, and take a listen to what I asked her.
For me to get some understanding, and this for you, were you personally under any stressful or altered mental state at the time of this experience?
I wasn't in a mental thing. I was more into, well, I guess it was, yeah, it was stressful. It was really stressful with him going through that. I spent a lot of time praying and asking the Creator to change him. And, you know, he and I went in a lot of back and forth because he lost his father when he was 20.
What about, have you, what I call critically examined what happened, and do you still believe the experience to be real now over time? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I still, I can still feel when he's near. I know when he's near. I can talk to him and ask him to visit me in my dreams. But when he transitioned, his sister, he constantly would come to her in her dreams, and she even told him in her dream to come visit me, and he said, just tell Mommy I'll get to her when I get a chance. I have things to do. That's him. That sounds just like it, you know? And, you know, he would visit her, and they would talk about things. He would talk about why he was the way that he was, and he was okay. And she was like, he knew exactly where she lived, you know, and he never had been to her place because she moved after he transitioned. And, you know, and when he finally came to me, you know, he was just walking towards me, you know, being himself. And matter of fact, I had a dream about him last week.
Oh, go ahead, continue.
He was a special young man. He had some issues. I've never seen anything like it, what he went through with his life. It was just the spirits that got a hold to my son. It became painful just to see a beautiful young boy. Life just changed. It's like something jumped in him that he just was never himself again. I was able to snap back and be himself. It's just like one day he walked away and came back somebody else.
Okay, I have another question for you, and it's just,
whether those clouds that Valerie saw and other people see in the sky was some type of an illusion or a figment of their imagination, I still qualify it as high strangeness. Because I get calls every day on our High Strangeness hotline, and a lot of these calls are so similar, I don't think it's no coincidence. Post your comments in this video, and we're going to classify this in 3 levels. 1 being high strangeness, 2 being medium strangeness, and 3 being low strangeness. Put it in the comments of what you think about what you just heard. Now, once again, if you experience high strangeness, here's our 800 number. Make sure you call us 24 hours a day, and let's talk about what's happening in your world. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and hop over to Roderick Martin High Strangeness YouTube channel, subscribe and set those alerts. Because I get over 50 calls a month, you're gonna hear a lot of high strangeness. And you know what? You may not believe it.
You have just watched High Strangeness. Subscribe, like, and share. Make sure you turn on the alerts so that you don't miss any new High Strangeness videos.